You're listening to episode 3 of the Confident Writer podcast with Jane Pike. Hello and welcome back to the Confident Writer podcast. Super thrilled to be hanging out with you today. I thought we could chat about 5 strategies for cultivating confidence. But I want to put a bit of a twist on this discussion and look at the cultivation of confidence from the position of process rather than goal setting. This year, I have done something completely radical for someone in my position, and that is I've done away with the traditional goal setting model. Over the last few years, especially in my membership program and obviously with writers that I've been working one-on-one with, goal setting has formed a part of our strategy and methodology. But the reason that I've decided to let go of it is because I'm not actually convinced it's the most effective process to follow. In my experience, and this is personal experience and professional experience, I've seen countless incidences of goal paralysis. So that's where you set a goal and then it kind of freezes you in time. It feels like the chasm between where it is you are now and where it is you want to be is insurmountable. Goal shame, so the idea that perhaps you don't want to share your goal or that your goal isn't somehow big enough or audacious enough. And goal panic, which ties into all of those areas as well. And this comes from writers who are really working to fit themselves into the traditional model. And as a consequence of that, finding that it's leaving them more depressed than motivated. I was someone that really espoused the goal setting model and I followed it myself, but I found it kind of non-inspiring, to be honest. It felt very linear, it felt very clinical, and it didn't really fit in with how I operate on a day-to-day basis. This doesn't mean that results became non-important. Actually, that's completely not the case, or that outcomes are no longer important. It's just that it felt like there was a better way of going about things. So what we do when we set goals is that we focus on attaining a specific result. And that in and of itself creates this disparity between where it is we are now, as I mentioned before, and where it is that we want to be. That dynamic is one of pass and fail. It's can I or can't I? And then, heaven forbid, if we actually do fail, in inverted commas, to achieve that goal, we gather all that feedback back up and use that to fuel this idea that we're somehow not good enough or we're not up to the task in the first place. We beat ourselves over our own heads with the idea that we're somehow not up to task. And goals are our way of basically measuring our sense of self-worth. What were we thinking? That's the sort of thing we tell ourselves. This is never going to happen. With that in mind, what I have turned it around to focus on is all about what we can control, what it is that we can commit to, and what it is that we can do consistently. I am super passionate about taking care of the process. If you take care of the process, the results take care of themselves. It's this wonderful equation. So what you might be asking now is, how does this relate to cultivating confidence? Well, it relates in many ways. The thing about confidence, and actually the thing about anything that we want to experience more of, is that we really need to start framing them as action words, as doing words, as opposed to static experiences that we hope to be a part of at some point. If you want to feel confident, you need to practice confidence. You need to intentionally and actively invest in its cultivation with the same level of diligence that you eat, drink, or take a shower. You need to make the decision to practice confidence rather than wait for it. The whole basis of this discussion is the very first pathway that I have in Joyride, my membership program. The all-in pathway is about defining your dream and then making that dream a daily practice. Let's look at a few ways now that we can begin this process together. Number 1 is to decide what you're going to commit to. And I've made up a word for this. I love making up words. What you can commit to, I call your committables. So your committables are the practices and processes that you're going to pay attention to on a daily basis in your quest to practice confidence. A good way to get started is to decide what confidence looks like for you. What does it mean to be confident? What are the ingredients? Also, differentiate between competence, which is your skill set, something that is time dependent, with confidence, which is your mindset, your ability to feel a certain way in any given moment. A sample list could include self-belief, trust, resourcefulness, and consistently managing your focus. That is a great definition for confidence, a great start. Now we know what that looks like. If we were to use that as the model, how are we going to take that theory and bring it alive as a practice? What would we need to do to practice self-belief? What would we need to do to practice trust, and so on and so forth? We want to choose to step into the practice of confidence every day and mark that down as one of our commitables. Number 2. It's a big one. I actually think you should write this on the back of your hand, maybe get it tattooed somewhere. Don't believe everything that you think. One of the reasons that we experience those big kahuna emotions that we all want to run for the hills from, fear, anxiety, frustration, all of those things, is because we fall into the trap of cognitive fusion. Quite a big word, a big couple of words. Cognitive fusion is believing in the absolute truth of our thoughts. And the thing is, are you ready for it? Just because you think it doesn't mean that it's true. I know, crazy, huh? If you were to take a step back and just observe your thoughts, so create some space between you as the observer and the thoughts which are running through your brain space, you might start to notice some familiar threads. Some of that will be harmless. Some of it will be supportive, so we're not necessarily always having detrimental conversations with ourselves, but there will be the times where the conversations that we are having are quite defamatory. I call these the workings of the itty bitty shitty committee, and they can vary in volume depending on how challenged we are or what it is that we're doing in the moment to expand our comfort zone. The itty bitty shitty committee, they're really a representation of our comfort zone in a very literal sense. So as soon as you start to extend your boundaries, your itty bitty shitty committee is sending out all of the alarm signals to say, hold on a minute, we need you to come back to the safe zone. What's really important to understand at this point is that even though the itty bitty shitty committee are trying to keep you safe, they're not really interested in your expansion or growth. So anything that you do which challenges your current parameters, you're going to have conversations that come up with yourself that tell you that this isn't a good idea. And so understanding when to pay attention when you're listening to a rational voice and when you're listening to an irrational voice is really, really important. Self-talk, that's also an important differential when it comes to understanding the difference between that and that white noise chatter in our mind. Self-talk is specifically how we talk to ourselves when we do so with intention. However, even with that intentionality, even the intentionality of our self-talk does not equate directly to truth. The self-talk that we do pay attention to, or the conversations that we do pay attention to, they are what form the identity framework that we're operating from. So if you're paying attention to all of the anxieties and doubts and worries that you're having, that is going to inform your experience. What we need to be careful of is what thoughts we choose to put energy behind and what thoughts we choose to leave. If we're seeking to cultivate confidence, then it makes sense that we really need to be proactive about how much energy and investment we're putting into conversations with ourselves that both promote confidence and deplete confidence, and choose between those two wisely. If you find that you're talking yourself down, and all of us do this at one time or another, you don't need to add another layer to it by beating yourself up about that. It's just about being proactive about what it is you're paying attention to, and then simultaneously treating yourself with compassion and empathy when things go a little bit skew-whiff. Let those thoughts go. Let the thoughts go that aren't actually supportive of what it is that you want to create, rather than feeling like you need to unwittingly digest this story that you're telling yourself that is destructive and disabling. Remember, don't believe everything that you think. Number 3, focus on what you can control. Along with your commitables, here's another word that I've made up. I want you to get on board with your controllables. So your controllables are the elements of your plan, elements of your process that you are directly able to control and influence. If you're faced with a challenge or a crisis of confidence, you can ask yourself, and this is one of the big questions, you could actually tattoo this on your other hand, what is it that I can control about this situation? It may be that nothing external is within your control, at which point the only thing that is within your control is your response and your perception of what it is that's happening. You may not feel like it, and it may not feel like it, but this is a choice that is always available to you. The choice to choose what meaning you attach to the specific situation you find yourself in. The skill of creating mental strength and confidence really does lie in your ability to frame everything within an empowering context. And this is an art that needs to be practiced. If there are elements within your control, then figure out the way forward from there. Take action on them, reflect if necessary, and continue on. Number 4, are you in it to prove or improve? One of my favorite questions. Are you in it to prove or improve? Firing this through your brain space during moments of uncertainty especially will instantly clarify whether you're operating from a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. A growth mindset is really where we want to be at. That sees us as ever-evolving creatures. When we are operating from a growth mindset, we believe that our skills and capabilities aren't fixed, but we're in a constant state of growth and improvement that's directly proportional to how much discomfort we're willing to handle. The thing is, and I guess it's kind of sucky in some ways, all development, all growth requires periods of discomfort. It's really a necessary part of the mastery process, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Avoidance of discomfort, which translates really to any experience outside of your comfort zone, that will not only see you stagnate, but it will see you regress. We need to embrace discomfort as part of the opportunity to embrace improvement. And when we do that, then we get to experience the satisfaction inherent to elasticizing the edges of our comfort zone. Number 5. I feel like I say this a lot, but this one might be my favorite. Recognize how fear and anxiety manifest for you. That's not my favorite part. And then practice everyday braveness. That's my favorite part. Everyday braveness. Braveness is another word that I've made up. I should actually just throw that in there now. It seems to have a nice ring to it. I like the word bravery and brave in general, but braveness, I don't know. I like adding ness to the end of things. I know we're talking about confidence here, but what we need to address simultaneously are the feelings that are typically associated with a lack of confidence. And they might be fear, shame, anxiety. We really need to understand how they show up for us. When we view emotions, especially emotional challenges, as part of us rather than an experience that we're having, it's easy to go down the rabbit hole of negative feelings until it spirals out of control. It's like a big tumbleweed in our mind. Fear and anxiety can leave us feeling like there's something wrong with us. They're very isolating emotions. They can make us feel embarrassed or ashamed. And as a consequence of that, the reaction that tends to come is that we retract and retreat, which only serves to compound the cycle. The pattern that's typically set off as a result of this is a shame trigger. And a shame trigger begins with an event or a circumstance that makes you perceive what is happening as a direct reflection of your inadequacies, essentially of how not good enough you are. I'm just going to put this out there. If you identify with any of what I've just mentioned, come and join the club, because so do the rest of us. The triggers might be different, but all of us have questioned our self-worth at some point or another. All of us have lamented about not being good enough or had our buttons pressed in a way that makes us just want to run away and hide. Retreating, hiding under a big pillow or a blanket, as appealing as it might be, it doesn't work. What I practice now is what I call everyday braveness. I practice this in my writing and I practice this in my life, and I think those two things can't be separated. Incidentally, we're going to be talking about a lot of things that overlap, because I'm of the opinion that how you are in the day-to-day does not change dramatically in accordance with being in the saddle. So we need to make sure that we're really practicing and cultivating the qualities that we want to show up with to our horses to make sure that we're able to essentially be in control of ourselves. Back to everyday braveness. If I'm in a situation where I feel those shame triggers arise, where I notice the familiar patterns that come up, and we all have them. So if you start to pay attention, you'll notice what yours are. I tend to get that prickly feeling. I get anxious feeling in my belly. I feel a little bit nauseous. I get a bit hot. Those things tell me that I am in a shame-triggered reaction. Secondly, you can remind yourself that your worth is never in question. Full stop, no arguments, never in question. What you're feeling right now is an experience. So off the back of that, you can then ask yourself, what's the brave response here? The brave response is whatever requires you to lean in and reach out. It might mean that you talk to someone and get some help with what's going on. It might be that you take a break and come back to whatever it is that you're facing. It might be to get back on and give it another shot. Whatever it is will be very specific to your situation, but the brave response is whatever requires you to lean in and reach out. Whatever that means for you, practicing everyday braveness will absolutely see you grow your confidence muscle and put you in control of confidence as a practice that you're able to invest in and put energy behind. Let's take it from the top and do a quick recap. 1, decide what you're going to commit to. Confirm what your committables are. 2, don't believe everything that you think. 3, focus on what you can control. 4, the power question. Are you in this to prove or improve? 5, recognize how fear and anxiety manifest for you and then practice everyday braveness. I would love to know how you found this episode, so feel free to share your comments and thoughts with me. And if you're finding yourself in the position currently where confidence and anxiety is getting the better of you in the saddle, I really encourage you to check out Joyride, my membership program. This is something we deal explicitly with, and I know from the variety of success stories that have come through the program just how beneficial it can be for turning things around. You can check that out on my website, www.confidentrider.online, or feel free to get in touch with any questions or thoughts. Have a fabulous day, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you in the next episode.